Good morning, dear beloveds. Well, I'm joining you on this Sunday morning, not something I would normally do, going live on the weekend, but this weekend in Australia has been a fairly significant moment politically, and I woke up this morning feeling a sense of burden and a sense of heaviness around what happened last night with the realisation that we had voted back in a very conservative Liberal government. For my international friends, it sort of feels a little bit like returning Trump for a second term. And there's certainly been shock in my community. I know that Facebook and social media can be an echo chamber where you think everybody shares your opinions and your beliefs, and when I saw that the government was not going to be as I thought it would be, which would be a Labor government, a more left-wing, still very mainstream party, but that we had stayed in the conservative right, stayed aligned to fear, stayed aligned to really voting against immigration, the rights of refugees seeking asylum, voting against the environment, voting against lots and lots of things that felt important and timely. I guess it felt out of step with what I was seeing in the communities around me, and that is shocking when things are so different to our expectations. But rather than sort of just sitting in that shock and that heaviness, what I wanted to do this morning was to offer all of us who, regardless of whether we're in Australia or another part of the world, we are seeing this right-wing conservatism really kind of taking over. New Zealand might be the exception, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of Australians who would like to go and be part of Jacinda Ardern's world. But for the majority of the Western world, we're seeing a right-wing conservatism that is bordering on really, really terrifying, if not already totally terrifying, and the privileging of, I guess, fear-mongering. So just to clarify, this is obviously just my opinion. These are my political views. This is certainly not about, ultimately about politics at all. What I want to speak about this morning is something very different to that. It's really more to do with what do we do with our grief and our sadness and our heaviness when we see the world moving towards privileging the individual's needs, privileging wealth, personal wealth over collective community-based abundance, and making choices that harm Mother Earth, making choices that are really about causing harm rather than causing good. And that is happening regardless of your personal politics, regardless of who you voted for. We are in a phase on Earth right now where fear-mongering is what is getting people into power. And whenever a choice for fear is made at the level of the collective, we have to be able to review that and reflect on that together. So this is, as I say, I'm just prefacing, really frustrated by my hair at the moment, I'm going to ignore that, really prefacing that these are just my feelings around what is happening in the Australian government, but also reflecting on what's happening at the world government. Also my feelings of sadness about things like the abortion law in Alabama that happened this week, and things that feel very regressive and very much about the patriarchy and the right-wing fear-mongering, that really conservative politics, which is really about individual gain over collective good. I want to reflect on that. I want to share my feelings about that, and I want to offer you, if you're also feeling any of those feelings, an opportunity to find the spiritual dimension and to find a way to move back into a sense of trust of the process, but also this is a call to arms. This is a call to, I guess, incite some holy rage, and really to invite us not to be apathetic. Being spiritual doesn't mean that we sit back and we stay out of the politics of the world. Our job, as Marianne Williamson and other people such as her demonstrate so beautifully, is to be invested in this dream, because it is how we awaken, and what we see in the dream is a reflection of what is within. So let's just break this down a little bit. I just want to take a step back and share a little bit of the bigger picture of my beliefs so you can understand from where I'm talking. We are in the age of the spiritual leader archetype. we are in this age, and many, many women and men are being called to step into spiritual leadership, even if right now from where you are, you don't necessarily understand what that means or how you're going to embody that archetype. The call or the yearning is there. My opinion of what spiritual leadership and what this archetype means is those of us who can lead must. And this leadership is about personal leadership. It is about integrity and congruence between faith and actions. That we must not say one thing and do another. That we must, if we claim to be spiritual people in the world, not sit back and contribute our fear, our unmet fear, our limiting beliefs, our doubt, all of the other ways in which our fear rises in us, and just let that contaminate the collective unconscious. Because the truth is, there is only one consciousness here. There's only one of us here. This is a core teaching of all of my work. There is only one consciousness here. And so what we do for ourselves, we do for all. Likewise, what we don't do for ourselves, we don't do for all, or we contribute the negative to the collective. When we look at the world as it is today, and this rise of the conservative political parties and the rise of fear-based fundamentalism and this idea of us against them, we are looking at our own unmet fear. So the spiritual leader is not needing to stand on a soapbox and convert everybody else to her beliefs, or get anyone to vote for a particular kind of party, or, ultimately treating the symptoms of the dream does not work. What we are is pure unlimited consciousness, and that consciousness is manifesting in a space-time simulation, which is the dream. The dream is not, however, redundant just because we know it's a simulation. The dream is absolutely about us recognizing how we awaken. So the dream is the tool or the program that allows our consciousness to awaken. So whatever happens in the dream is our opportunity to grow or not grow. And at this point in time, we are seeing the collective unconscious, that mass unconscious mind, is moving more and more towards a conservative fear-based reality. Now, we don't have to become fearful because of that, because remember, there is absolute power in not treating the symptoms of the dream, but treating the level that we can cause change, which is pure consciousness. The spiritual leader says, what have I done to contribute to this? And what actions can I take? And what changes in my perception can I make in order to correct the error? That is a far greater responsibility than saying, or a far greater challenge than saying, I'll just go out and I'll, tell people they're bad for voting for this government, or I'll make people feel, angry with me because my politics are different to your politics. To take personal responsibility, to sit in the stillness, to go into the depths of the underworld of your soul and look at your unmet fear, look at your unmet biases, look at your unmet subconscious belief systems that are causing harm to the one mind, and to correct your perception. That is deep, deep work. That is the work that we're being called to do as spiritual leaders in this time. And yes, that will then mean that your life in the world becomes congruent with your faith, and you step out into the world with much more integrity. You are then a demonstration of your faith, and your faith is that all is one, as within, so without, and everything is but a vibration. And here we can look to these three immutable laws to guide our actions. We cannot get angry that a right-wing government has been voted into power if we are harboring feelings of fear around lack, if we're harboring feelings of fear around anything at all. Our fear is contributing to the need for that government to be in power at this time. All unmet fear is contributing to that one mind, and that is our responsibility, to go and meet our fear fearlessly. Because what we are seeing in the world is simply a reflection of what is within. The first law, law of mentalism, all is one. The second law of correspondence, as above, so below. As within, so without. I'm not looking at the world right now and saying that world is bad and terrible and separate to me, and I'm over here being good and great and having amazing opinions about things, and I don't have to, implicate myself in that. The Ho'oponopono teaches us this. When we say those words, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, we are taking personal responsibility for everything that we see. Every time we see a politician on the news, or we see devastation of the Amazon rainforest, or we see your children being abused, I am sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, because that is me. There's only one consciousness here. This is not a small thing to wrap our heads around, but if we can truly embody the law of mentalism, or make the commitment to move towards it, you see how we will stop behaving in ways that privilege a few and cause harm to many. Because that harm that I am causing by my inaction, my unmet fear. I may not directly have gone to the house of the child and abused them. I may not have directly contributed to the environmental impact. I may not have, voted in that political party. It doesn't change the fact that I am personally responsible, because there is only one of us here. The law of mentalism, all is one. And the truth of that law is that all is one, and that oneness is love. That is our true nature. But we place our consciousness into the dream in order to have the experience of waking up to that truth. And that is all that's happening at this stage. We are appearing to be regressing into fear. We are appearing to be regressing as a whole planetary consciousness, but it is always darkest just before the dawn. And it is my great belief that the darkness that we're seeing consuming the world, even though we know it is but a dream, because everything that happens at the level of form is just a projection of our consciousness, is a necessary reminder to us to be vigilant, not to abdicate personal responsibility. And here we come back to the spiritual leader archetype. The third law, the law of vibration, states that everything is but a vibration. It is but consciousness. It is not solid matter. And so the changes that we need to make are not at the level of the symptom, but at the level of pure consciousness. Go and meet your own fears, dear one. Go and meet my own fears. I'm going to go and keep deepening into my work. My life's work is to meet my subconscious fear, my unconscious biases, my fear programs that I've inherited, my ancestral programs, my genetic lineage, the things that I have taken on from the collective unconscious because I wasn't vigilant. I watched TV. I let my mind be programmed, and that mind is now contributing that fear back to that collective one mind. I had conversations I didn't want to have. I let people say things in front of me about other people that I shouldn't have let them say. I ate things I shouldn't have eaten. I ignored my intuition. Every single time we make a choice for fear, we are contributing that choice to the collective. There's no point running around and beating ourselves up with guilt and judging ourselves as having sinned, however. The best thing that we can do, the only thing that we can do, is correct the error. The error is the correction of perception. Where I have behaved in a fear paradigm, I have contributed that fear paradigm to the collective unconscious, and I cannot look at the world and say I am separate to that. The personal responsibility of the spiritual leader is to say, I am that. I am that. And it is my job to change the faulty thinking in my subconscious that has precipitated or required the world to reflect back to me what I'm seeing, because everything in the dream is serving my awakening. So this new political party is serving my awakening to the truth that I was in fear, I was making fear-based choices, and now I will correct the error. It's a cry. And this is where we must be unafraid to engage with the world and the events of the world. We are so often distracted by entertainment, by fantasy, by absorbing ourselves in a non-reality in order to avoid looking at the political reality, the environmental reality, the humanitarian crisis, the refugee crisis. We think that the spiritual person maybe doesn't engage with that. But if we use our spiritual tools to bypass the world, even though I am telling you it is a dream, it is to abandon your personal awakening journey, because the dream is serving the awakening of our consciousness. I understand that for some of you this is like really old news. You know this, you understand it, and all I hope is that in listening to this you will feel encouraged to keep digging deeper into your own process of awakening, because your process of awakening is that movement from fear to love. For those of you who this might be new, or you're wrapping your heads around it for the first time, please just simply let the truth ground into you, descend, anchor into you, because we really can't go here with the mind, the brain, the logic, the reason, the analytical mind to understand the truth of these words. Our task now, as we watch the world move further and further into this kind of conservative right-wing, politics, this fear-based mongering, where we're seeing women's bodies as the site of war, as it's always been, where we are seeing, the destruction of the mother as though she is separate from us, as though we can simply just keep taking with no consequence. When we feel the grief in our hearts, when we feel the heavy burden, when we wonder who is it that is making these choices, recognize the truth. I am. I am. And every time I don't meet my fear, and every time I don't take personal responsibility for my fear-based choices, I am abdicating responsibility for the collective. My task is not to get myself alone into heaven. It's an impossible task. You can't have a beautiful life in isolation. You can't pursue the path of spiritual awakening for your own benefit, because there is only one of us here. So if you are here now listening to me, dear one, please know that the spiritual leader archetype is typified by her desire to serve the greater good. And this is perhaps where we've gone so wrong with our spiritual seeking in this current New Age paradigm. We've used the laws to try and improve our own little piece of the earth as though we can make things better for our kids and our partner and our own bank balances, without privileging the truth that there is only one consciousness here. And every time I choose personal gain over collective good, then I am causing suffering. Every time I make a fear-based choice that would protect my little patch of the earth, which is a little bit what I think has happened with this move towards a right-wing government in Australia, or the maintenance of that, is this fear of lack. This fear mentality has infected us, and we have been willing to say, I've got to protect my bank account, I've got to protect my investments, I've got to protect my kids, I've got to protect my little patch of the earth, rather than looking globally or even nationwide and saying, what is for the better, the betterment of all. This is not something that is easy to do, because we're taught that it's okay to use our spiritual tools just to make our own little patch of the earth better and to improve our own lot. And we use this analogy a lot in the Institute of that's simply moving furniture in a burning building. This does not mean I want you to give away your worldly goods. It does not mean I want you to live in poverty. It doesn't mean I want you to go about the world suffering because other people are suffering. Increase your power to serve. The more you have, the more capacity you have to serve and to create a greater paradigm for all. But if you get caught in the idea that it's okay to use your spiritual awakening as a way just to get more stuff in the dream, to use the laws to just improve your personal bank balance, or to have a nicer car or a bigger TV, then you have lost your way, dear one, and that is not spiritual leadership. Spiritual leadership is congruence between faith and actions. If I'm living in accordance with the laws, if I'm saying all is love, all is one, then I must be willing to take the action in the world that demonstrates my faith. If I'm abdicating that responsibility, if I'm simply coming back to how can I make things better for my own little piece of the earth, my own children, my own partner, my own bank balance, then you have forgotten who you are. And this is part of the agitation to wake you up. When we saw Trump come into power, it was a global shock. It will be less so when the world wakes up to the truth that we have a Liberal government in Australia, because we don't matter so much politically. We're a much smaller population. But as a global trend, it is a scary kind of addition to us of the trend towards something that we hoped we were moving away from, or certainly the people in my world hoped. Even the non-spiritual people. This is a much bigger conversation, but I'm speaking only to the spiritual paradigm today, and to those of you who are seeking some deeper understanding. So to review what I've said, I just invite you, if you identify with or drawn towards that spiritual leadership archetype, that you recognize that the time is now, that your faith must match your actions in the world, that you must become congruent, and that is personal leadership, personal self-responsibility, self-sovereignty, and that it is not about improving your own little piece of the world, but what am I contributing to the one mind? How am I or not meeting my fear? How can I contribute to something greater than my own personal happiness? Not afraid of lack, not afraid of loss, not afraid that will mean that you have to give everything up. That is the opposite of the truth, because the more power you have, the more power you have to serve the greater good. But don't lose sight of the fact that we are pure consciousness. All is one, and as within, so without. Your unmet fear is contributing that fear to the world, or your willingness to meet that fear and make a braver, love-infused choice is what you're contributing to the world. You don't have to get it right, you just have to be willing. And that is my request today, is that you be willing, as I am today, to take personal responsibility. Okay, what in me have I not yet met that has meant that I need to see this particular political trend happening? What is it in me that I need to meet? What is it that I need to understand about myself and the way that I may have been contributing? And it doesn't have to be a direct relationship, okay? So I'm not saying because we have a right-wing conservative government in Australia that I have conservative political beliefs inside of me. Any unmet fear is contributing fear to the one mind. Fear is only one. There is only one fear. Fear is it. So when you try to make a false idol of fear by saying it's fear of this or fear of that, you're actually just contributing to that idolatry. Stop thinking in terms of what is the cause of my fear, what is this particular fear. Recognize anything that is fear is not love, and that is the error that needs correcting. That is the correction of perception that needs to occur. I realize I've covered a lot. I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I mostly want to encourage you to know that you do have personal will, you do have personal responsibility, you have the power to contribute to global change simply by changing the perception of what you are and being willing to meet your fear every damn day. Every damn day. That is our job. That is what spiritual seeking is. That is what spiritual leadership is. Please don't buy into the idea that it's about book contracts and increasing your wealth and about, getting certain amounts of followers on Instagram or any of that shit. It's personal responsibility to do the deep work. Do the deep work. Walk this path with absolute sovereignty. Recognize that you are the one. There is only one of us here, and that is you. And everything you do makes a change to the entirety of consciousness. Don't put that responsibility down. Do not sit in your victimhood. Do not deny your power. Let's own our sovereignty in this moment, and let's move towards the truth of what we are, which is pure, unlimited consciousness, who with just one miracle entering into us can correct the perception for all. That is our power. We are not isolated. We are not finite. We are not victims. All right. So let's take a moment now to go into prayer, if you'd like to join me. And we'll seal this conversation, which I hope has brought you some relief, and to understand that we have the power within us. Let us pray. Dear God, dear infinite, unlimited consciousness, dear Goddess, we vow this day to take the personal responsibility to correct the error of perception. We vow this day to take up the crown of our sovereignty and wear it with pride, to put down our victim, to put down our fear, our doubt, and to recognize that change can only occur when we are willing to change. We vow this day to be unafraid to meet our fear every damn day, for that is the deep work of the spiritual seeker, to remove the impediments between our God consciousness and our human consciousness, so that we may be whole and holy. We vow this day to take personal responsibility for the good of the collective, to put down our needs just to improve our own lot in life. We vow this day to be your hands and feet in the world. I am that I am. We vow this day to recognize that there is only one consciousness. There is only one of us here. And what we do as individuals, we do on behalf of the collective. What is the quality of our offer this day? How are we contributing positive change? We vow this day to remember that even though the world we see is but a simulation and a dream, it is a necessary dream that allows us to awaken to the truth of what we are. We vow this day to be unafraid, even in the face of contraction and fear. We are your humble servants. Our life is in service to the greater good. We will not shy away from our power, from our leadership, from our sovereignty. We are here in your name. And so it is. And it is so. Thank you, thank you, thank you, dear beloveds. Thank you for letting me talk that out, to put my ideas out into the world, and to feel a lot better for having shared with you and for connecting with you today, because, yeah, this kind of hit me a bit like a body blow and I wasn't prepared for it. And I feel really clear now. I feel reconnected to my truth. I feel certain of my responsibility to make positive change just by changing my perception and then taking the actions in the world that I'm inspired to take. It's a good day. Let's vow Let's really honor that vow that we just made to go deeper into the truth of what we are and to be willing to meet our fear every time it rises. We can't hide from the truth that this is the work. This is the work we're here to do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a beautiful day.